Good afternoon, traders. This is a live no trade recap from this morning. I just didn't have a chance to make a video, but it's Friday, April 16th. We're going to go over everything that I was watching, why I was watching it, and why I did not take a trade. And then if you would like to become a member of the trading group to get access to the things you see me use in this video, like the 2-hour calculator, trade tracking spreadsheet, all that good stuff, just go to the YouTube Trading Armor homepage, click on the little Facebook icon. That'll bring you over to the Facebook trading group. You can become a member. Everything is completely free. This is not a trick. If you click on files, you'll have access to all of those things that I mentioned. Also, like for example, this morning, I didn't have time to make a video, but as soon as I was done trading at 4:30 a.m., I created this announcement just to let everybody know. I don't alert people to stocks. That's one thing, let's be clear on, because I don't agree with that. I think that's a really bad idea. If you've ever traded stocks you've been alerted to, you probably already know why that's a bad idea. So that's not something that you're going to see here. But I do talk about what has been happening in the pre-market while I was trading, and what that could potentially mean for the rest of the day. But everything is up to you. You take this information and interpret it how you will. So let's take a look at the video. First, as always, I like to start with Webull, open on the market's pane, top gainers pre-market, because that's when I was trading, and organized by volume. Now it's about 12:30 in the afternoon, but this list isn't that different because Mtsl was pretty quickly the number one volume traded stock, but that didn't make it tradable, and I'll tell you why. So let's take a look at the video. There was also LYG. This is now at just before 4:01 a.m. LYG was the number one stock being traded by far, with almost 62,000 shares of volume at this moment. But it's covered up down here. But if you look at these key statistics, and you always should before you enter a trade or even consider entering a trade, you'll see that the float size of LYG is about 17.7 billion shares of a float size. And if a stock is in the number one position, my absolute cutoff is 500 million shares float size, because they just don't move. And you could see that this thing had all this volume very early in the morning. It was moving even less than 0.5%. So it's totally not tradable. So anyway, let's get to the video here and see what we were looking at. So Mtsl made a really nice run in the aftermarket. It was up over 100% by the end of the aftermarket. And it was kind of a nice setup, like at the beginning of the aftermarket. Well, not at the beginning of the aftermarket. Let's take a look at it really quick here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. When it started trading in the aftermarket, which was not right at like 4 p.m., which is when, if I'm going to trade in the aftermarket, I look for things in the first half hour. So it started at 4:36, but it kind of had a weird little run here. Again, this is all subjective, which I don't like to really trade off of, but I did look at this later and just think this was a little bit strange how it kind of popped up. It opened here, then ran all the way up here, but then closed down here. So naturally it kind of chopped around after that, but eventually did break out through that high. And once it did, it got very strong and continued to run up. So if you kind of ignore this pattern here, this run was pretty nice. It looked pretty strong. It kind of kept making new highs, little pullbacks, and then new highs again. And then here was a little consolidation period. And then finally, really broke out before the aftermarket closed. So again, this part is subjective. I was thinking this thing could really make a move if it had volume at 4 a.m. and it did. Like I said, it was started out number 2 and then eventually made number 1 very quickly after 4 a.m. but just continued to sell off. This was a high established at 7:54 p.m. in the aftermarket hours. And then let's look at where the first 4 a.m. candle is right there. So you could see that it kind of opened with a gap down, which is never a good thing, but doesn't mean it can't continue through previous highs. But it didn't in this case. It just continued to sell off. And even any reversal play that you may have taken, I don't play reversals because they have too low probability of working out. But pretty much every reversal failed. This thing never ever got back near the pre-market highs, even right before the market opened. And then throughout the day, even though this is number 1 on the list by volume, it is just dwindling. So this is what I mean when I say, and again, it's not foolproof, but when you watch the early morning pre-market hours and you see things like this happening, the number one stock failing to make new highs, you know that something is up. And it's not always obvious if you just look at the top gainers list, because again, if we look over here, top gainers pre-market, it's still number one, right? So it looks promising. But if you read into that and know that, hey, this number starts really from the extended hours, from the after hours, which is kind of weird, but that's just the way it goes. I don't know if other screeners work that way. But even though this says pre-market, this includes what happened in the after hours. So that's where this big number comes from. It's not actually from the pre-market. So that's a very important detail to know. So always, look into the pattern and see what it's been doing in the extended hours before you decide to take a trade. So if you look at my video, I had marked out that previous high. So I'm waiting for it to make a new high. And I also been tracking the pre-market volume here. So I made a note that LYG had 62,000 shares. We're looking for a correlation between volume and whether or not, my day ends up green. And that's going to take a long time to collect enough data. And so far, all the data is really inconclusive, because here was the highest volume day and there was no trades to take. And then here, out of the 3 days that I've taken these records, the lowest volume day was a green day, and this 13,000 day was a red day. But three samples is not a sample size. I need like 100 before I could draw any conclusions from that at all. So let's take a look at MTSL here. So we've already seen this chart, so we kind of know what's going to happen. The other thing that popped up but looked very strange, and I, again, try not to trade subjectively at all. I just look at my criteria, and if things meet my criteria, I take a trade, and that's it. But GFN looked very weird. So it opened up with this dashed candle, which already means, I can't really take a trade because there's not enough volume there. And then makes a new high, makes a new high, immediately pulls back. This is, this is really no pattern. So I was kind of on the fence with this. Do I try to look for an entry when a 1 minute candle makes a new high? Because it does kind of meet my criteria, but it was just so strange. And this month has been so strange. And also, if you looked at the range of the candles, there wasn't really any money to be made. So the range of the candles was very low. So I just decided to remove it from the list. Also, actually, when I removed it from the list, it did drop off the top three. So it wasn't really tradable at that time anyway. So it did come back up on the top three, you can see there. But then the move already happened that I would have taken, which would have only been a very tiny profit. So again, once I've missed an entry, it becomes untradeable anyway, because I only take the first possible entry, and that's it. So looking at MTSL here, you could see that nothing was happening. It wasn't getting anywhere near the previous highs. I mean, you kind of already know the end of this story. And then here, this one's pretty interesting. PTRS popped up on the top gainers. It was the number one. It overtook MTSL as far as just percent gain. So it automatically goes on my list when that happens. But I was very cautious because, and this is where you have to have some experience. You can't just say, oh, it's the number one top gainer, let me jump in, let me take a trade, because there must be a reason. Well, yeah, I'm sure there is a reason, but a lot of times it's traders pushing up the stock, trying to do a pump and dump. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened here, but that's basically what the end result was. There was no volume, 82 shares on this candle. So that's not enough volume for me to consider. I want to see like in the thousands of shares at the very minimum. And so I was already suspect of this thing. I mean, anytime something just kind of runs up like that on one candle, like 100%, because here it was at $7 and it went to 14, that's already a little bit of a red flag. So you should proceed with caution at that point if you proceed at all. And you can see what happened is this thing immediately, these are 1 minute candles, immediately came all the way back down. And again, with no volume, if you look at each of these candles, there was very light volume. Here's 3,000 shares. Some people obviously got tricked by this signal, the fact that it was a top gainer, and got excited. Or other people that had been holding this stock for a long time saw that and decided to sell off. So that thing did nothing. And actually at this point too, I should say that it immediately went from number one on the top gainers to back down to like number 15 or something like that in the matter of 2 minutes, because it was up over 100% and now it's up around 11%. So that's that. So watch out for that kind of stuff. Just because something is a top gainer, even if it's the number one top gainer, does not make it tradable. And GFN was back in the number like 3 spot at this point, so I had to go back on my list. But again, I mean, I've already missed an entry, so I guess I was just watching it out of curiosity. There's no way I could have or would have taken a trade on it at this point. But you can see all it did was kind of move sideways. So that's really it. Then I think it was just about 4:30 at this point, and I was just making notes on the day, and that was it. My plan right now says that I can only trade from 4 to 4:30 a.m. If nothing has happened at that point, then I shut down Webull. And if I was considering trading the rest of the day, possibly doing trading at 7 a.m. or the market open, or even after hours, that's not possible, because if there is nothing for me to trade from 4 to 4:30 a.m., I take that as a sign of market weakness. And really, I guess right now I need to redefine that as individual stock weakness, because the market overall has been pretty strong, but individual stocks have been extremely weak all month. So that's a sign for me to not look for any trades later, and I did not do that. If we go to my Webull, you can see that I'm not lying about that or what I did this morning. Daily P&L 0 because there were no trades taken. The account value is exactly where it was 2 days ago. Yesterday I overslept, so you can see no working orders, no filled orders, no canceled orders. Yesterday I overslept, and that was why I didn't take a trade yesterday. But still, if you look at the month so far, even without that, there's been 2 no trade days so far. That's pretty unusual, and also another sign of things being weird. This looks like 2 no trade days last month. Maybe I forgot about. Let me see if I put a note down there. Top 3 stocks were below their previous high. Yeah, so unable to trade due to internet issues. So yeah, there was really only 1 no trade day last month. But I think really kind of what was happening at the end of last month was a precursor to what's happening this month. You could see that things went from really good to kind of not so good as the month progressed. And then in April, they just continued in that not so good category. So anyway, at least, I mean, it's always a good thing when your plan keeps you from trading on weekdays like this, week meaning WEAK. And that's what happened this morning. My plan is designed such that it kind of automatically identifies weakness for me. But it looks like it could do a better job at that if you look at the rest of this month, because I was getting into trades that were breaking out through previous highs as per my plan, and they are basically giving me false breakouts. So that's why I'm tracking this volume at the first 1 minute candles. I'm trying to improve this strategy and plan as far as keeping me out of weak markets. When the market isn't weak, or when the individual stocks aren't weak, this plan works extremely well. And then when things are kind of, not so good, it works kind of well as far as keeping me out of trades, but that's where I'm trying to improve it right now. So we'll see how that continues throughout this month. The energy in these individual stocks, it's bound to come back. So for now, I'm just going to continue following the plan and the strategy, and taking trades when my criteria is met, because it could just be one day where everything turns around and all this energy comes back. It's happened before many times after these lulls in the market. So we don't know when that day is going to come, but in my experience, I've seen this happen, and I haven't really seen it last for more than about 2 weeks. And here we are, really 2 weeks into April. So next week could be it. Who knows? The market doesn't follow any rules. Just because that is what's happened in the past doesn't mean that's what's going to happen in the future. We could have another 3rd week or even 4 weeks. Who knows how long this will last? So the best thing to do is always take your stop losses, no matter what. Honor your profit targets, and in the long run, you should be green. Take care.